But my bookings soared from free backyard birthday parties to 3,000 destination events within 6 months. I was building something real. With every invoice I sent, with every glowing review from a client who wasn't related to me, I felt my spine straighten and my voice grow louder. Meanwhile, my parents barely noticed. To them, I was still just Nora with her camera. They didn't know I was working with elite event planners, or that one of my engagement photos had gone viral after being reposted by a celebrity stylist. All they ever asked was, "Did you get that photography outfit for the wedding yet?" I'd smile sweetly and reply, "Yes, I did." Charlotte's wedding day arrived dripping with too much sparkle and not enough soul. Everything was drenched in pink and gold artificial smiles and champagne giggles. I showed up right on time, not as a guest, not as family, but in black as instructed. I had a camera slung around my neck, but it was just for show. I had no intention of giving them what they wanted. Instead, I gave them what they deserved. When they handed me a folded list of photo instructions, make sure to get Charlotte and the girls during the bouquet toss. Don't forget Dad's speech. Focus on her, not the crowd. I tucked it into my coat pocket and excused myself. While the ceremony unfolded in the grand ballroom, I left. I had scheduled a meeting with the venue's owner 2 weeks earlier. I had already put in an offer on the property, a beautiful historic mansion on the outskirts of town, struggling financially after the pandemic. With the help of the business connections I'd earned over the past year, and a healthy deposit from my now profitable company, the venue was mine, officially in escrow. The paperwork had been finalized just 2 days before the wedding. Yes, I owned the building Charlotte was getting married in. As the ceremony concluded and guests floated toward the reception hall, sipping wine and complimenting the bride, I returned to the venue office. I printed a single page, sealed it in a glossy white envelope, and walked toward the head table. My parents didn't even look up when I approached. They just waved their hands as if dismissing a waiter. Charlotte was too busy taking selfies to care. I placed the envelope gently on my parents' plates and said, "Here's something special from me. Open it together." They barely glanced at me. My mother rolled her eyes and muttered, "Hope it's not another photo album." And then they opened it. My father's brows furrowed. First, then confusion twisted into disbelief. His lips parted. "What is this?" Mom's voice was sharper, laced with suspicion. "Nora, is this some kind of joke?" Charlotte finally looked up her phone, lowering slightly. What's happening?" I smiled softly. "It's an eviction notice. You're 3 months behind on rent." "What are you talking about?" Dad snapped, his face paling. "I bought the venue," I said, my voice calm, level, and filled with a quiet pride. "This entire estate. It's mine now. The contract was signed this week. You hosted a wedding you couldn't afford in a building you no longer have rights to, and I wanted to be sure you'd remember that." My mother looked like she'd been slapped. "You're lying." I pulled out my phone and held up the signed deed. "No, Mom," I said with the same syrupy tone she once used to humiliate me. "This is me finally being seen." There was silence, the kind that rings in your ears, then whispers, then gasps. Guests who once ignored me now stared in shock, some with admiration. The servers I'd once stood beside now looked at me like a boss, because that's exactly what I was. They had used me, belittled me, mocked me. But I had turned every insult into income. And this was only the beginning. After the shock of the eviction notice rippled through the room like a quiet explosion, I didn't stay to bask in the aftermath. I turned and walked out of the ballroom, my heels clicking with a new powerful weight on the marble floor. I didn't need applause. I didn't need validation from people who once made me invisible. My revenge wasn't about their pain. It was about reclaiming my name. That night, I sat alone in the bridal suite, which, thanks to the transfer of ownership, I had full access to. I poured myself a glass of champagne, the same overpriced label my mother used to say wasn't for people like me. I toasted to the silence, the peace that finally filled the space where shame used to live. I didn't cry, not out of sadness anyway. The next morning, I left a small envelope with the venue staff to deliver to my parents. Inside it was a photo, not of their perfect daughter in her gown, not of the first kiss or the wedding cake. It was a picture of me standing tall outside the venue's gate, holding the deed with a soft smile, and a caption handwritten beneath in gold ink, "Property of Nora Jameson." A week later, I received a voicemail from my father. His voice cracked halfway through. We didn't know how far you'd come. We didn't mean to." I deleted it. I got another message from my mother. "Charlotte's moving out. Things are not going well. If you could help with..." And then came a letter from Charlotte herself. Pages long, full of phrases like, "I never realized," and "You were always so talented. Mom and Dad were wrong." I didn't reply, but I framed the last line of her letter and hung it above my new studio door. "You were never the failure. We were just too blind to see your power." Months passed. My business grew. I started mentoring young girls who'd been overlooked the way I was. I told them, Your worth is not up for vote, and sometimes the people closest to you are the least qualified to see your brilliance. And one warm afternoon, as I stepped into my studio, the sun cutting through the glass wall, hitting the gold lettering on the door that read Nora Jameson Studios, I caught my reflection. Not the forgotten daughter, not the family disappointment, not the photographer they pushed to the sidelines, but a woman who had built her own spotlight and never needed their applause to shine in it. Because the truth was simple, they laughed when I was most likely to fail. But I laughed last, and I laughed louder inside the home they no longer owned. A valuable lesson. This story reminds us that true validation comes from within. When others fail to see your potential or worth, don't let their